how does a person avoid getting burnt out in ministry?
This is such a huge thing, and I think the main statistic I think for youth ministers is 2 years. It's
Wow.
usually 2 years for burnout, and that's why often you'll see a high level of rotation in youth ministry staff. It just burns people out, chews us up, spits us out.
Yeah.
It's a big question, and especially just even with ministry health in general, for everyone, for volunteers, for people who are paid staff, for people who are just working hard. Burnout is such a big thing, and maybe it's me being cynical, but I think it's less of if you work hard, if you put your heart and soul into your ministry or whatever you're doing, it's not an if burnout, but when burnout. And I think knowing how to recognize in yourself when you're starting to feel tired, when you're starting to feel exhausted, when you're starting to feel like this is all going to crumble because it's all on you. When you feel that weight and are overwhelmed, when you recognize that in yourself, being able to give yourself the resource to not be crushed by it. There's burnout, but there's just like combustion at the end, like you can burn out, but not, combust and not destruct. And I think one of those things is healthy community and healthy relationships, being able to, whether it's sharing the load and the weight of the ministry of the work of ministry, sharing that load, or finding those trustworthy relationships where you can confide, you can be corrected if you need to, you can be challenged, but where you can always find confidence. I think those relationships are super key in walking through a burnout. And two, I think understanding that feeling exhausted or like approaching a burnout or being burnt out and how do I get out of it now, that's a season of its own. It's not going to be, okay, I went to a week-long conference or retreat or whatever, and now I'm back, I'm ready, I can take it all on again, give me more. In fact, I think it takes us time. When I was thinking about this question, I thought of in the fitness world, there's muscle exhaustion, right? When you're strength training and you're weight training, there's you go to a point where you exhaust the muscle group, or you exhaust the muscle from working it so hard. And what's critical after that is recovery. So whether it's a balance or you're just building this insane, muscle mass, recovery is so essential. And I think God wired us that way, from our physical bodies to our soul. We need places where and people that we can recover with. So maybe I'm cynical, but I think burnout is a regular thing when you work hard, and not to say that it should be, or that we should work ourselves to a point, or that's some sort of badge of honor to be burnt out. Absolutely not. But I think being able to be self-aware and recognize in yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed, especially, start to pull some support around yourself from people, sharing that weight of the ministry, and providing space for yourself to be able to rest and recover, I think is really huge in that. And not if, but probably when you burn out. If you work really hard, if you don't work really hard, probably not going to be an issue for you. So it's just fine. It's fine.
I think it's very important for people to take a Sabbath. I believe the 6 days you work, God said 6 days. He didn't say 4 days, because some people are just lazy. I work 3 days and the rest 4 days. Stop being lazy. You work 6 days, and on the 7th day you take a break. Because I think people are getting burnt out. Like you said, they're having the burden on them, and they're not willing to share the responsibility with other people. Like, for example, when Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came to talk to Moses, he's all like, you're going to kill yourself. This is Edward paraphrasing, but he said, you're going to kill yourself. So appoint elders and judges to see stuff that's pretty much beneath you. And if they can't figure it out, then have them come to you. So I think it's very responsible. It's very important to make sure you delegate responsibility. But some people, they just always want it their way. They might be a perfectionist, but please don't let your perfectionism lead to you dying. We don't need that. All right. So just
nobody needs to die.
No. So delegate. Please just delegate. And then also in Luke chapter 5, verse 16, Jesus, I never saw him burning out, but the Bible does say that Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and pray. So sometimes you got to withdraw. You just got to, take 6 weeks off, take a sabbatical. It's fine. Like, oh, it won't get done. It might not get done, but at least you have your sanity.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what I've seen was very sad is you see people on fire for God. And we're going to hit on this because this is what you specialize in school. You see people, they're on fire for God. They're doing all these great works. And then out of nowhere, you see in the news that they committed suicide. So I want you to speak about that aspect and talk to people who are in ministry, who want to start ministry, like telltale signs, like before you think about even taking your life, what are some signs that you could see? And then this is why or where you should go get help. So can you just hit on that real quick, Lisa?
For sure. And if you're at that point of suicide ideation, there's help for you. There's the hotline. But you're not alone. Please, DM one of us or, and we can help walk you through how to find help where you are. But you are loved and you're valued, and you don't have to continue to feel that way. There's healing for you. There's hope, that this is just a season that you will recover from this, and it doesn't have to take you, and it won't, in Jesus' name.
Amen.
I believe that for mental health things, it's so we're getting just started in the church of being able to talk about mental health issues, without a stigma. I think there's still stigma in culture, but I think it's, kind of being more rapidly accepted, especially in younger generations. Younger generations don't want to play with mental health. They don't want to mess with it. And so you'll see a lot of value from younger people, Gen Z and younger, on mental health. Maybe because they're watching all of us go crazy and they're like,
I don't want to go through that.
Can I get some help? Which is fair, right? Generationally, that's fair. They can learn from us, and teach us too. I'm so curious, as a side note, of what my grandchildren will be able to teach us about COVID-19. Like, there's going to be so much by then that we'll know.
They probably refer to it as like a Bible story, like, y'all locked in for, was this the Passover, Grandma? Was this the Passover they were talking about? No, this that was one
Jesus,
night. We were in there for 18
bust in
months.
on people in lockdown. No, maybe, probably, hopefully for you. I don't know. I didn't see him in his physical form, but hopefully somebody did. So I think in church world, we're just starting to see the value. And I think, there's far too many people we've lost in ministry to this idea of perfection and this idea of untouchableness, and being willing to say, oh, people in ministry, people who are carrying the work of the church, can have mental health issues and not be spiritually immature or spiritually lazy or unfaithful somehow, or have secret sin in their lives. Those things might lead to some mental health issues, but that's not an indicator of something going wrong spiritually. Some people, like myself and my family, we are predisposed to mental health issues just genetically. And I think I just encourage everyone to kind of let go of, that there's something wrong with you, That's why it's not called mental illness anymore. I think we're encouraging people, and I'm glad that we're encouraging people to instead think about mental health instead
Yeah.
of only associating these issues with illness,
Mm-hmm.
while the illnesses are very real. But you mentioned being able to recognize in ourselves, and I think that that feeling of overwhelm
Mm-hmm.
is so critical, because especially after a long period of time, that kind of erodes, the soul. It really
Yeah.
does. It erodes your spirit. It erodes, everything else seems so much bigger, when you feel pressed already, and you add that one extra thing,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some physical things, that you could speak to as well, about the effects, because we're whole people.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned, in the beginning, our bodies and our minds are connected. There's a very real effect that mental health has on our bodies. It takes a toll, insomnia or weight gain or loss,
Yeah.
or some of these other things that are indicators in our body saying, hey, my brain needs help here.
Yeah.
I need some help. And I think even being able to just acknowledge, we are not made to carry this and carry out this perfection that we've projected on ministry people
Mm-hmm.
for so long, that we have to have it all together,
Yeah.
and that we can do no wrong. I think we just have to let go of that. And there's been too many people that we've lost, for fear of talking about it, and for fear of being labeled as less than. So I don't know. What do you think, Edward?
I think we need to stop looking at pastors and pastoral staff as idols. You always have to realize that your pastors, they're human. Like the worship leader, they're human. So if they slip up, what do you expect them? They're not Jesus. They're human. So instead of us, I'm a big proponent of people praying for their pastors, praying for their worship leaders. Because what I see now in church, I think it's always been like this, but as I get older, I see more, is that people, they're either two things in church. They're either consumers or contributors, one to two. But it seems like, I'm just making up a number. It seems like 80% of people who attend churches are consumers. So they're going to get what they can get from the pastor. They can get, because I grew up as a pastor's kid. So I since 2 years old until now, I've seen it. But the thing is, after the pastor does not give what they want to get, then they go find another pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know, I need to sit down and talk to my dad about this. Like, how does that mess with your psyche when they say, like, you're a good man of God, you do this, but we're still leaving your church? And you know what I mean? Or they do it a messy way and they try to take like half the church with them. Like, so I think we just have to realize that people are people. Pastors are people. Leaders are people. Team leads are people. Until we realize that, we will not be sympathetic to them when they make mistakes.
And I want to be clear too that, mental health and mental illness, or, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, none of these things are failures on anyone's part. You know what I mean? I think there's certain things that we can perhaps do to condition ourselves to be, depressed. But I think as pastors, and ministry leaders and church leaders, there's so much weight being carried, and just the idea, it's a radical idea, Edward, but just being kind to yourself, I think, is just like,
love yourself, huh?
Where has that gone? I had a counselor ask me one time, what would it be like to be compassionate toward yourself?
Wow. No, that's selfish. We can't do that. No,
Can't do that. No time. These people need me. I can't do that. These people need me to be compassionate toward them. I can't do that. I think the just being aware of the expectations you have on yourself. But certainly, like you said, Edward, there's just a humanity, that we, this is our reality. Humanity is our reality. And it cannot be anymore that mental health issues, are the result of mistake or the result of sin or the result of, unfruitfulness. It just can't be that anymore, because that only makes it worse for the person who's experiencing that hardship and suffering from that illness. So it just compounds it. So I think that idea of not just being kind to ourselves, and not making that a measure or like another thing that I have to be perfect at, but all to say, there's grace for you and space for you to be kind, just to yourself. And there's I think certainly room to grow in the church, in the capital C church, of being kind toward, leaders who are struggling.
Just be kind to leaders in general. What upsets me?
You don't know. Yeah.
What upsets me so much, Lisa, is that people have the gall. I'm going to use gall, the SAT word, the gall.
Audacity and gall, unmitigated gall.
Yeah. To say, if I was a pastor, I would do this. Or if I was team lead, I would do this. Let me tell you something right now. You're not the pastor. God did not choose you to be the pastor. God did not choose you to be the team lead. So instead of us criticizing the leaders, how about we compliment the leaders? Where we see them weak, we say, I can help you with that. Instead of waiting for the leader to come beg you for help, how about you like, hey, what do you need help with? Whatever you need, I'm here for you. Because it's frustrating when you see people say that if I was the pastor, you're not. If I was the president, you're not. If I was if I was the CEO, you're not. So it's just frustrating. Instead of us saying like, how about you just say, Lord, I don't know what my pastor's going through, but I ask you that you just strengthen him, that you bless him, that you give him peace, that you bless his family. Because what happens is they don't understand that when the pastor burns out, the whole church would start to go astray. But you have to realize, before their ministry at the church, God gave them their first ministry, which was their family. And before, they never even talk about the family. How's the church doing? How's your family doing? Like, Lisa, every time I converse with you, I'm like, how's Lisa the person doing? Not Lisa with the 10,000 hats. How's Lisa? Because the Bible says, I pray that your soul prosper. So that's what we need to get. We need to start asking people how they're doing, not because of the task they do, or not because of the hat they have on, but how are you doing as the person? Because how your heart is will determine how your life will be. So
I love it.
I'm just frustrated when I hear people like, if I was a pastor, you're not. You're not the pastor. You're not Pastor Kent Muncie or Pastor Ali Muncie. All you can do is pray for them, pray for peace. Stop doing this whole mess like, you're not. Sorry, God did not choose you. I'm not saying God did not give you a ministry. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is God did not choose you to be a pastor of a church. So you can see that was pent up frustration.
Safe space, right? Safe space. Love it. Yeah.
That's just how I feel. Is let's pray for people. And
I love it.
And how I look at it is like, if you need a therapist, get a therapist. But my whole thing is, let the first be first and let the second be second. So always give your burdens to Jesus and be sensitive to his voice. Because he might say, okay, I'm going to heal you, but I'm going to heal you through a therapist. I'm going to heal you, but I'm going to heal you through counseling. Like, your marriage is like, it's garbage right now. I'm going to heal it, but I want to use a counseling services to heal. So people's like, oh no, I got Jesus. Jesus will always give you supplemental things that you need to do. Sometimes God will just heal you like that, and that's God's prerogative. That's him being sovereign. He can do whatever he wants at the end of the day. Or sometimes he goes like, I want you to go through this process. I want you to go through the counseling. I want you to go through the therapy. So there's a lot of people walking around with hurt that they have never dealt with. There's a lot of people walking around with church hurt, and they're just trying to prove something to themselves, and that's why they end up burning out. Because they're like, well, my father and my mother said I was never going to make it, so I'm going to keep doing it, and they end up burning out. And I think that's what they need to address. Go get a therapist. Obviously, first, talk to Jesus. That's always our answer, is talk to Jesus, and then go get a therapist and see what is rooted inside of me. Why am I keep going like I'm never satisfied? And once you start working that out, I believe that can be because all I believe is like depression, anxiety, PTSD, all that stuff, I think is just a fruit. But I think as Christians, we need to stop attacking the fruit and we need to start addressing the root.
Right.
Once we address the roots, because once you uproot the root, there'll be no fruit. So talk to Jesus, get a therapist. If you need to write in a journal and stuff like that. Because I think the days are over that we just don't talk about depression or talk about anxiety. It's like you need to pray it away, pray it away. I grew up in the church. I know praying is effective. I know praying is powerful. But what is a supplemental thing God is trying to give you in your time of prayer?
Where is the answer to your prayer?
Yeah.
What has God provided close to you?
Come on.
Sometimes so close to you.
Come on.
What has God provided for you to rescue you from that? What
Yeah.
has God provided for you? You pray, yes, God is answering, God is close. I think sometimes too with depression in particular and anxiety in particular, it's so easy after a while and part of, serious depression is kind of feeling like a cloud over you, right? And that's a common, phrase people use to kind of describe, this kind of fogginess. But in that state, it's so hard to pray because you feel like it's one directional. You feel like it's a one-way prayer.
Yeah.
And you can't hear Jesus speaking back to you. You can't always. And there's comfort in knowing and holding on to just by faith that God is in fact with you and is in fact, in that cloud with you.
Yeah.
And, but also that sometimes before, you get to hear back from Jesus or get to hear back that I am healing you. I am healing you. Sometimes before we can hear that from God, from Holy Spirit to our spirit is getting that help. You have a responsibility to what God gave you to steward your body, your brain. You have permission from us, unsolicited permission. You can go ask for that because God is providing it for you to be able to experience that healing. His answer is always going to be, I am healing you. I am healing you. And healing is available. And I think that, like you said, gone are the days where we can just expect, I'm going to pray it away. I think that it's like that old parable, right? Where a man's in a flood and he goes up to the roof and, Lord, I'm a religious man. I prayed. Why didn't you rescue me? Well, I gave you a man on a boat. I gave you, a helicopter. I gave you, as these people went by, and he said, no, I'm a religious man. I prayed. God will save me. And then gets to heaven and finds, oh, you provided all those things for me. And I didn't, we could get into the whole, receiving, are you not receiving, but I think sometimes it's hard, especially in that cloud of depression and anxiety where it's hard. And if you're listening to this and you are struggling with that, what I mean when we say it's hard to hear from God.
Yeah.
He has not left you. He is there. There are things that you can do now to step toward healing, and Jesus is with you every step.
Yeah.
In every anxious breath, if you have panic attacks, he's there in the breathing with you. He is there.
That is so good. And then also, if you're in the church, join a life group. Join a life group. So
a little louder for the people in the back.
Join a life group, because a life group is a wonderful community that can pour into you, and you can lay your stuff on the table. So join a life group. So talk to Jesus, talk to your therapist, talk to your life group. Those are my 3 points.
I love it.
Thank you for our TED Talk. But I think that's so important. It's like the devil will always try to isolate. Like when Peter was talking about the devil roams like a roaring lion seeking for someone to devour. He never said some people, not some church, not some group. He said looking for someone to devour.
Yeah. So
if someone's feeling burnt out, like get connected. Not get connected so I can serve more. Get connected so you can get poured into more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, I want to talk to you, Lisa, because you're full-time staff ministry. So how do you so how do you prevent burnout? Like you as a person.
Me as
Like,
a person.
yeah, like do you like, okay, I'm not gonna look at anything ministry, I'm just gonna watch some Netflix. Or I'm just gonna like, watch, I'm gonna spend time with Morgan. Like, how do you prevent burnt out?
Yeah, well, I've experienced burnout a couple times, right?
Okay.
So I'm not the best person to ask on how to prevent burnout.
Mhm. Well, okay,
But
how about
that
this? How do you work your way out of burnout? How
yeah,
about
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they're one and the same, right? Like I
Yeah.
think there are helps, right, in burnout or toward burnout. And like we said before, like those relationships are so key. Those healthy, confident, building relationships. Those are just exactly what you said. Even if I'm watching Netflix, it's not the same as watching Netflix with Morgan. It's not the same. But I think being aware too that there are things that we can turn to that self-medicate, that just are kind of coping mechanisms instead
Mhm.
of strength building. Things like those relationships, those trustworthy people, and it doesn't have to be five. It can be literally one person. I have two main people in my world that
Yeah.
I go to
Yeah.
as those confidence building you know uh, relationships. I think it's so key. But again, too, like if you find yourself in this exhausted state where you're overwhelmed, like finding somebody else to talk to, like a counselor, I think is so important when you realize that you are on your way to burning out. Or you are burnt out. It's so helpful to have somebody who is trained to walk you out of those places,
Yeah.
who's been there before, who can help walk you out. I always think of counseling as the rescue helicopter, right? Like
Mhm.
you're in a maze that's 10 feet above your head and you cannot see where you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
It's so big you can't memorize all the turns and twists and whatnot. But a counselor is somebody who's up high, on the radio with you, walking you through where to go because they know the map. They
Mhm.
know what questions to ask. They know how to help walk you through those hard seasons. So there's no shame in asking somebody to help you.
Yeah.
There's just not. Except the shame that we put on ourselves,
Mhm.
or that we listen to from the enemy. There's just shame and condemnation there, and you don't have to accept that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, like I said, the relationships, the rest and recovery, knowing what is restful to you
Yeah. Yeah.
is different between people, right? Like rest for me is like the most restful thing that I can go do is go on a rigorous hike somewhere in
Yeah.
a lot of nature.
Mhm.
That is not one of those two relationships. No, glamping is even too much. Like we can't even go, that's for her.
Yeah.
It's, spa day, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like finding those things that are restful to you, whether it's reading or, being in the sun,
Yeah.
being outside, finding those things that, are truly restful and not just relaxing. There's a difference, I think, from relaxed, not doing anything,
Yeah.
to rest and being energized and encouraged for what's next. And that the thought of what I think a good indicator, a good litmus test is to wondering whether you're burnt out is thinking about what's next after where you are,
Mhm.
or looking just a little down, like whatever's next. Is the thought of what's next overwhelming?
Mm.
And
Okay.
like, are you dreading what's next? Or are you excited about it? And truly not, um, okay, yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm all for, speaking in faith, things that aren't as though they are 100%.
Yeah.
But, if you find yourself like really just being honest with yourself, am I dreading what's next? Am I dreading the next day going in? Am I dreading the next event? Would I rather be in bed? Right. Like those are clear signs.
Yeah.
Would I rather be watching Netflix with my cat? Yes. Then those are clear signs, that you might be heading toward burnout.